Hey everybody, it's time for Summer Garden Tour Part 2. So in this area, we're mostly under construction, but we do have our Sasquatch there, and then this area is planted with a variety of plants. You have black mondo grass along the front edge, then blue sedge. I have some beard's tongues in there, rudbeckias, echinaceas, lupin. There's two of the false ash leaf stem spireas, magnolia tree like the one in the front by our shed. Have a maple in behind that. Also have Asiatic lilies in here, and a nandina, and our contorted filbert red majesty, which is the mother plant for the other one that I showed you in the first garden tour. Behind it we have another Japanese maple, and then this is what the emerald cushion looks like after it's grown on for some years. It just makes this nice, dense, lush carpet of green, and it doesn't die back in the winter. It's not invasive. It maintains its shape. This hanging basket I just filled with sphagnum moss because I was having a hard time finding a liner for it, and then I popped a clearance sun parasol from Lowe's into there. And you can see here how perfectly this emerald carpet behaves. It's just growing perfectly around the sedum, hasn't invaded the plant whatsoever. It's just an awesome plant. And then I planted some white Nancy lamium this spring along this border to bring in some of that kind of bluish white foliage color in with all the hostas and everything, so I'm hoping that'll fill in. These two sides are both planted relatively the same with hostas along the edges. We have a Japanese maple in the corner and a hydrangea that's actually a red hydrangea, but in my acidic soil it's blue. A bleeding heart that we just planted this spring that'll bloom white in the springtime and give some flow and color in here. And then we have trilliums, and these are actually native trilliums. We dug them out of our hardscape side of the landscape and moved them over here. I had read a bunch about how they didn't like to be moved, but they're thriving in both locations on either side of this little rock river we have. And then up here we have some hanging baskets, which I intended to be shade baskets, but I didn't get plants soon enough for them. Then I was having a hard time finding what I wanted, and they didn't really work out. But there's a couple begonias in there, a white Nancy lamium, and then I did get this coleus that's still sitting in a pot that's a trailing variety just to add in to help fill it in some more. But for the most part, they were epic fails this year. Over here we have two Japanese maples that have kind of made this nice little archway, and then we have Alaskan ferns. Now these were planted last August, so they've been in the ground about a year now, and look at those crazy mushrooms slash fungi that are on that tree stump there. We do have some vinca back there. Then we have another bleeding heart on one side of the rock with some heucheras in front of the rock. And then these are chameleons. Now we bought flats of these the first year that we started planting our landscape, and they all died. At least we thought they did. And they definitely aren't growing where I planted them, but randomly they decided to come back. So I've just left them and let them do their thing. If they live, they live. They die, they die. They grow where they grow, as long as they're not invading anything. These 4 trees, actually, as of the time of posting this video, have been taken down. So this whole area is actually being revamped. It'll all be in an upcoming video. So the hostas have been pulled out. So we moved around to the front side of this, and in the corner here I have an ice plant and then a sedum to match the sedum on the other side, some pansies wrapped around. There's actually a box there. So then we have an Albrido coleus and lemon slice calabrechia and a bacopa in this little planter to kind of conceal the box some more. Some balloon flowers, some red lightning heucheras, and then Japanese painted ferns, which those have also been relocated. They did not like the full sun that they got once the trees came down. Absolutely love the coloring on these Japanese painted ferns though. And then we have Virginias, which have all come out also. I'm actually trying to find a home for them right now. They're living on the side of my shop. But all of these we took out once we took the trees down. They do fill in, they make a dense carpet essentially. They're evergreen. They bloom pink or purple or magenta flowers depending on the variety, but I just wasn't in love with them, nor was my husband, so we took them out. And then we have a wallflower here and a rudbeckia. We actually had a bunch of them, but most of them died. We have some echinacea in here. And then this is an orangeola Japanese maple, and he's kind of buried right now. We're actually thinking about moving him. And then there's marmalade heucheras and ice plants and the Persian chocolate creeping Jenny along this edge. And then we have these blanket flowers, which just have the most vibrant color to them. And even when they're not blooming, they still have visual interest. I mean, look at the red on that. We also have some phlox planted up there, but they're not in bloom yet. And behind them, as the backdrop to everything, there's a burning bush that's actually flanked by 2 nandinas, but we need to do some pruning because right now you can't really tell what's what, and the burning bush is taking everything over. On this corner, I have 3 hostas and black mondo grass, and then a hanging basket. There's 2 different varieties of hosta, so the front 2 are the same and the one in the back is a different variety. What I'd actually like to do with this area is pop these out and put in a tall, skinny, narrow evergreen tree. And then moving right along, on this side over here, we have a variety again. I have another hydrangea that's also supposed to be red but doesn't bloom red. I have calabrechia. I have Silver Falls dichondra and sweet potato vine planted along the edge. There's black mondo grass, marmalade heucheras. There are crocosmias in an orange variety. They're much shorter and much more well behaved than the lucifers. There's a few evergreens popped in there. There's another variety of heuchera that's a red variety. Those plumes that look kind of like dried dandelions are white alliums that bloomed in the early summer. And then we have Asiatic lilies up there, Oriental lilies. Here's our hanging basket, one of my favorite color combinations. It has, I don't think it's actually the honey Supertunia by Proven Winners, but it's very similar in color to that. And then a red one and a yellow one. And then behind the kind of bunch of what looks like maybe lily foliage is kind of a purpley green plant. Absolutely love those. Wish I could find more. It's called a Joe pieweed and the variety is a chocolat. They're absolutely one of my favorite plants and they do bloom. They'll be blooming probably in another month or so. These white flowers, and they're just so well behaved. They just exist there. They die down. We cut them back. They come back. They're about the same size. They're not a thug. Absolutely love them. And then we've got a cottonous smoke tree in behind the rock. We're trying to kind of train it to be tall and narrow. It gets these giant flower plumes, which if you can see up there, there's some like dead branch looking stuff at the end. That's actually where the flower plume shot out of. And then we have 3 burning bushes that were lined along the back there. This is the only bundle of rudbeckias that really did well this year and came back for me. And then I have a stump planter and the hydrangea on the corner, which that's a Bay Harbor, I want to say. And then and we move over to this hanging basket. Shout out to Vassy Nursery. I absolutely love this like red on red tonal hanging basket. And then we have our front flower bed, which is still very much under construction. Right now I have some echinacea in there, some Asiatic lilies, a very sad dahlia, hoping that it'll at least put on a little bit of happy growth and blooms this year. And then I have another dahlia next to it. We have the balloon flowers in the front, which these things are just so interesting. They start out these little tiny like nodes, and then they keep progressing and getting bigger until they get to that. And then they go through like one more stage before they pop open and turn into these pretty white flowers. Now, when you're pruning on these, if you're sensitive skin, you'll probably want to make sure you wear gloves. It does secrete kind of a white, milky, latexy substance, so I have to wear gloves when I prune on them. And then we have these little flowering maple trees that we got. And then we have this. Absolutely love this. It is a Japanese pine. It's got these succulent, soft pine needles that are just so interesting. And this is going to go in the back where the 4 trees were fallen. And then my front planters, which are all matching pretty much. The front 2 by the side of the stairs kind of mirror each other. But there's Calabrechia, licorice plant, Silver Falls dichondra, sweet potato vines, dahlias, and daisies in there. And those didn't really turn out the way I would have liked this year, but they filled in really well, and there's lots of color. So here you can see another one of those flowering maples. Oh, and then our hebe. So these we just planted this spring, and they'll turn into like 18-inch by 18-inch evergreen shrubs. And you can shape them into squares or circles or leave them natural. In the back there, we have a clematis in that planter that we just got this year. And I just kind of put some Calabrechia in to fill in around it. And then our Japanese maple. Not sure what variety this is, but it's green and then it turns red. And then our blue surprise. I need to find another one of these to move to the other corner, or put in the other flower bed in the other corner. And I also want one for the gazebo, but I can't find them anymore. So it's a bummer, but eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to add a couple more of those into our landscape. And then you can see here, I actually intentionally left this. This is a weed that we have that's called purple loosestrife. And its foliage looks similar to the foliage when the Asiatic lilies first start coming out and when the echinaceas first start coming out. So until we let it turn into a little bloom, or at least start to bloom, we can't really tell what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those now. But I just figured I'd let you see how sometimes the weeds can look like your flowers. So that may have been what happened with my echinaceas and rudbeckias up on the wall that I lost. And then here's a view of our tiger stripe maple from the front. And I hope you enjoyed the second part of this garden tour, and thank you for watching.